All right, now on December 31st, 2019, the World Health Organization was informed of an outbreak of pneumonia of unknown cause, which was detected in Wuhan City, Hubei province of China. And fast forward to 4th of March 2020, we have a name for that virus or the viral outbreak, and that is on COVID-19. Well, there are so many cases surrounding the same, so many myths, so many misconceptions, so much information that people don't really know as far as COVID-19 is concerned. Well, tonight on Ebru TV Primetime News, we'll be having a discussion on the same, and of course to disseminate the myth surrounding the COVID or the coronavirus, which again, of course, some of the cases have been detected in Africa, but we'll be getting into that a little bit later. For now, we also have a discussion, like I said, on the same. If you have any question as far as the coronavirus is concerned, you can send it on our SMS line, and that is on 40920. Tweet me at Winnie Lubembe or at Ebru TV Kenya. We'll be looking at them in a short while, but for now, let's take a look at some of the stories that made it to the headline. To the broadcast, the 4th day of March 2020. Trust that your day was well. My name is Winnie Lubembe. Our sign language interpreter tonight is Joyce Wairimu. And of course, like we promised you earlier on the coronavirus confusion, we'll be having a discussion on the same to demystify the myths surrounding the coronavirus. And what are some of the things that you need to do to make sure that you protect yourself and your loved one from contracting and spreading the virus? And of course, that will come along a little bit later. We have one Dr. Moses Masika, who is a virologist from the University of Nairobi, to just help us or shed more light as far as the coronavirus is concerned. But for now, let's start with some other stories. And the relationship between Kenya and Somalia has now taken a turn for the worst after President Uhuru Kenyatta accused Somalia of violating Kenya's territorial integrity and sovereignty. The National Security Council, which met today at State House, Nairobi, has maintained that the gun battle witnessed at the Mandera border amounts to unwarranted attack by foreign soldiers with the intention of provoking Kenya.
The National Security Council noted with concern the violation of Kenya's territorial integrity and sovereignty by the Somali National Army on Monday, the 2nd March 2020 was uncalled for. The council accused Somali soldiers of flagrant breach and total disregard of international laws by harassing and destroying properties of Kenyan citizens living in the border town of Mandera. The attack caused fears at the Kenya-Somalia border, where armed forces were exchanging gunfire, causing havoc on both ends of the border. According to the council, the baseless accusation and invalid allegations made by the federal government of Somalia that Kenya is interfering with Somalia's internal affair are a part of growing and persistent pattern of ill intent to use Kenya as an scapegoat and a tool to justify challenges in Somalia for political reasons. President Uhuru Kenyatta has urged the federal government of Somalia to cease from unwarranted provocations and focus on managing its internal affairs for the welfare of our people, defeating terrorism and advancing the cause of peace, security and stability in the region. Both countries have not been on the same page lately. Kenya and Somalia are currently at the International Criminal Court of Justice of a maritime border dispute. Abdes is Ebru TV.
All right, to some other stories now as far as the coronavirus is concerned. And then following the unprecedented disruption of the aviation and travel industry caused by the coronavirus outbreak, leading to cancellation of flights and rescheduling of passenger travel in recent months, many companies in the...
There's been no reported casualty in Africa yet.
The association is also warning that its members may have to send home some of their employees if the situation continues as it is.
The company I work for, we have no intention. And the only thing that may happen if numbers continue declining is that we'll encourage staff to take leave, those who have leave. Not unpaid leave, but those who have leave. So we do not expect this situation to persist to a level where we have to send people home on unpaid leave.
Companies across industries are clamping down on the travel and avoiding events and conferences as fears over the spreading of the outbreak escalates. Wanyoike notes that the major cancellation of major conventions and events in major cities have led to a major decline in passenger numbers and revenues for the travel agents in Kenya.
It's not on movement, domestic movement. It's more on conferences, meetings out there that have had to be cancelled because of the risk that the travelers feel they'll be exposed. And as a result, you find all the major events that were scheduled to happen in those markets that are highly seen to be risky. They have been cancelled. As a result, of course, the tickets and everything that goes with it has to be unwinded.
It's still very early to tell the exact impact, and we will have more information on this as time goes on.
As the government prepares mitigation measures to combat the deadly coronavirus, the Kenya Association of Travel Agents has called upon travelers to engage with certified travel agents directly to receive credible and factual information to guide their travel decision presently and in the future.
But what we have seen is that our members, who are the travel agents, the businesses that they are booked within those markets, we just mentioned the Far East, China, Italy, whatever. Those ones, you have had to have 100% cancellation of that event. A major conference that has to be 100% cancelled. So it's not going to be general cancellation, it's specific.
We strongly recommend to the travelers to engage directly with the travel agents for clarification, additional information on the airlines. At this stage, we wish to highlight that there are numerous fake stories that are circulating on social media domain, and these are not founded on any facts or data, and they are contributing to a lot of misinformation to travelers, leading to unnecessary anxiety.
Busara Naman for Ebru TV.
And still on the same, a second case of coronavirus has been reported in Senegal. According to the country's health ministry, the patient is an 80-year-old French national who arrived in the West African country on February 29th. The patient is being treated at the same hospital for infectious diseases in the capital city, Dakar, where another Frenchman was hospitalized for coronavirus last week. News of this second confirmed case in Senegal brings the total number of confirmed cases on the African continent to 12. Other countries with patients who tested positive for the virus include Algeria with 5 people, Egypt with 2 people, Morocco with 1 person, Nigeria and Tunisia with 1 person each. Senegal is one of the 33 sub-Saharan African nations with testing facilities for coronavirus. The authorities say they are well prepared to deal with the virus. In a directive to all countries, the World Health Organization said it expects the remaining 14 sub-Saharan nations currently without testing equipment to gain facilities within a fortnight. As countries continue to strengthen their health systems in readiness of an outbreak back home, the government has suspended direct flights from north of Italy to Kenya due to the coronavirus outbreak in Verona and Milan. In a statement issued on Tuesday, National Emergency Response Committee on Coronavirus Chairman and Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe said the decision was made after consultations with the Italian embassy. The statement reads in part, and I quote, "The National Emergency Response Committee on Coronavirus has concluded that flights from north of Italy, specifically Verona and Milan, which usually has direct chartered flights to our coast, be suspended effective March 3rd, 2020. This part of Italy is experiencing coronavirus incidents which could affect safety to Kenyans." End of quote. The virus has spread to about 70 countries, infected more than 90,000 people, and killed over 3,000 people globally. Winnie Lubembe for Ebru TV. All right, and of course, that forms the subject of discussion tonight, where, like we said earlier on, we'll be demystifying the myths that surround the coronavirus outbreak. And of course, this started in China, and that is last year in 2019. But come March 2020, of course, we have a name for it. We have experienced various outbreaks in different countries. And of course, the number of people who have died from the same is over 3,000 now. So what does that mean? Especially in Africa, where the numbers are not really so much, but some of the cases are there. What does it mean for Africa and for Kenya at large? And how prepared are we? Well, that is what we are about to find out. And we have Dr. Moses Masika, who is a virologist at the University of Nairobi. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you very much for making time for us.
Thank you
today. Really appreciate your time. And before we even get to this numbers, because we see some really shocking numbers over here.
Yes.
But before we get into that, let's just start with our country. At the moment, there's so many myths, there's so much information. Let's just start from there, out there.
True.
Might not be true. And, and some of the info is not completely true, or not completely false as far as the coronavirus is concerned. And so many people don't really understand what coronavirus is, what it's brought about by, and how can you infect the other person. So can we just start with the basics then? When we talk about coronavirus, this is a new strain. So coronavirus in itself has been there for how long now?
Coronaviruses belong to different subfamilies, but as a family, they've been around for over 8,000 years.
All right.
So they've been around for a long time. The new coronavirus, it's now called SARS coronavirus 2, as far as we know, emerged sometime in December.
December, yes.
And we've seen it spread now from China to become a global problem. Yes. As for what it does, it causes COVID-19, which is a disease of the breathing system. That means that people develop a fever, tiredness, a cough. In some cases, they have difficulties in breathing when they're getting into severe disease. And even in the very worst cases, they may get organ failure. Interestingly, unlike other flu-like illnesses or viruses, this one does not seem to cause running nose most of the time, which is what we're used to.
Yeah.
And yes, that is coronavirus
Specifically
2019 version.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, you see, when you talk about it, it is like a common flu. Most people right now, everybody, I mean, if they have like some sign of fever, some sign of coughing here and there, one of the first things that comes to mind is coronavirus, all right? And then we think that coronavirus equals death.
Yes.
That is the thing that people are walking around with. And of course, we are seeing cases of stigma here and there as far as coronavirus is concerned, because people are scared. Be like, well, if I get coronavirus, then I will die. So then, is this the end result, really? Like, should people panic that much?
It's important to point out that if somebody does develop a flu-like illness, it doesn't mean, especially in Nairobi, that that is corona. Right now, the most likely cause of a flu-like illness is the usual viruses that we know, because the chances right now of getting corona are still low, although globally the risk is high. Until we have a few cases in Kenya, then we can say anytime you see somebody with a flu, this could be corona. Yes, it is possible, but right now it's most likely, if they have a flu, it's most likely not corona. In addition, the virus, although it does affect our health, is not lethal in most people. If you take 100 people, 80 of those will not require serious medical intervention. Means they'll have mild disease, some will have moderate disease, those 80. Another 15 or so will require hospitalization. And maybe 3 or 4 of them will die. And the deaths are occurring in people who have other risk factors. Say they have underlying diseases in the heart, in the lungs, diabetes, and other conditions that make them more vulnerable to the virus, and this is usually in the old age. So for people who are below 60 years, below 50 years, we are seeing very little death. More people are recovering. Most people are recovering from this virus. So if you do get it, it's not a death sentence. Of course, it causes a lot of anxiety, but it's not a death sentence. It does. Most people will recover.
And speaking about people with other underlying factors that again could result in cases of death and all those things, there was this reports that people, of course, I think this is more on the people who are saying, not necessarily for the report, and this is in relation to HIV, and coronavirus. So can we just demystify that? Is it true? Is it not?
What are you saying?
Because again, at the end of the day, no? People say that people who have or who are living positively have a higher chance of getting coronavirus and dying from it.
So far, we do not have evidence that how HIV interacts with coronavirus. So we cannot say definitely that people with HIV are going to die from corona. It may be that if they have a weaker immune system, they could be easier to infect. But what we've seen right now in Africa, most people with HIV actually now know their status and are on treatment. So for the major part, they are not as vulnerable as they used to be. But as we get more cases, probably we will be able to correlate with the people who are positive, HIV positive, and those who are not, to see whether there is any interaction. But as it is now, we cannot say definitively. We can't speculate and say if somebody is HIV positive and with a weak immune system, and these are those who are advanced stages of HIV, they're likely to get corona. We don't know if that is true, but it can be speculated. What we need is to see more cases, and then we can compare, and we can definitely say from that, is it related or is it
or
not?
not? Yeah,
Yes.
still a lot of research going in because
Yeah, a
like
lot
you
of
said,
information
this
is
a
still
new,
not,
yeah,
yes, not known.
This is a new strain of the coronavirus. It's still in Africa. I think we'll talk about the myths a little bit later.
Yes.
Let's talk about then the transmission.
Yes.
Because some people are like, fine. So this thing started from the animals and then it came to humans. This is what people are saying. So
Yes.
you are the expert. So of course you'll tell us all those things.
Yes.
And then it came to humans. But we have pets at home.
Yes.
So what do we do with them? Do we, you know, like what happens to them? So
Yes.
can we just talk about transmission? And then we'll talk about when, at what stage, especially after contraction, is the infection very, very dangerous?
All right. So it is true that this virus is associated with a bat virus. Bats have a lot of SARS coronaviruses.
Yeah.
And we've seen that if you analyze the genetic makeup, that it's very closely related to the bats. We also saw that the initial cases were reported in a live animal market in China, which means lots of animals, including bats and snakes. So it is true that the link is there to animals. But the driver of this infection is man, is humans.
Yeah.
No bat took the virus from China to Italy. No bat took the virus from China to Korea. No bat took the virus from China to US.
Yeah.
It is human-to-human transmission.
Okay.
And this is what is driving the current outbreak. In the same vein, it is more likely that a human being will be interacting with another human being who has corona than it is right now for a pet to do that.
Yeah.
It's likely that if a pet is going to suffer from this disease, which is possible, that is being infected by the owner or by another human.
Okay.
So as it is, we are more worried about infecting the pets than the pets infecting us. And it is true that from the cases we've seen, most people have acquired the infection from other people, not from their
as
pets.
compared to the pets.
Yes, so it's
Okay, then.
theoretically it's possible if a pet is infected to infect you or to infect somebody else.
All right.
But as it is, not so many of them are infected to drive the infection, the outbreak.
Okay.
But it is possible for you to infect your pet. And you know, many times we interact very closely
With the pets.
with
Yeah.
pets. So
All right.
it's good to take care of them. And especially if somebody is showing symptoms, then they should stay away as much
And
as
we'll,
possible.
We'll talk about the preventive part later on, because the aspects of self-quarantine as well.
Yes.
What does it mean? I mean, do you just sit at home and do nothing, or what happens?
Watch Ebru.
Exactly. And all those things. We'll talk about that a little bit later.
Yes.
But then at what point then, after contraction of the virus,
Yes.
is one able to transmit it to the other person? Because most people think, oh, well, as long as you have the symptoms, you stay away from us.
Yes.
You know? Yeah.
Yes, yes, that's a very good question. This virus, after exposure, after infection, will take on average 5 days to show symptoms.
Yeah.
This can range from 2 days to 14 days.
Okay.
It is the symptomatic people who are causing most of the infections or transmitting most of the infections.
Yeah.
But there have been some cases where people have been able to transmit even before they show symptoms. And those are the people we worry about, because then there's no way of catching them in a surveillance system early because they're not showing symptoms. But for the major part, most of the cases are being transmitted by people who are showing symptoms.
Okay.
And this happens any day between day 2 of after exposure to day 14, but for most people by day 5, showing signs and symptoms.
Yeah. All right.
Yes.
Then how is it that there's some people who do not show symptoms and others, even like you said, after 2 days of exposure, and they have, symptoms?
Yes.
What brings
That
about
happens
the
for all
difference?
diseases.
Yeah.
That depending on your makeup, genetic makeup, not facial makeup,
Yeah.
your genetic makeup, your immune system, your health status, you will interact differently with different illnesses.
Yeah.
That for some people will be exposed to a low dose of the virus, which takes a longer time to establish itself. Some are exposed to a high dose of the virus, which develops quickly into an illness. And for others, the immune system is a bit more robust. They're able to control the infection, which delays the onset of symptoms. So there are different things that could affect even the environment where you are in, what you eat and things like that are likely to have a bearing on how you interact with any disease, not just coronavirus. So we see different people reacting differently, or bodies differently reacting to viruses, and this is not any strange.
Okay, then.
Yes.
So then how then do you transmit? Because there's some people who tell you this is just through coughing and that's it. And there's some people who now do not even shake hands. They'll be like, hey,
Yes.
Corona,
Yes.
Corona, so we're not shaking hands,
Yes.
all right?
Yes.
So it's either we just say hi,
Yes.
you know, and
pull
go
a,
away.
you pull a Magufuli.
Exactly,
Yes.
you know, on the same. So then can we talk about then the different modes of transmission? I mean,
Yes.
after cough. Then
The most obvious form of transmission is if I have corona and I cough or sneeze, I release plenty of droplets. These droplets are laden with the virus, and they can go quite far depending on the environment. How dry is it? If it's very humid, they will drop very quickly. And these droplets will get into somebody else's mouth or nose as they breathe in, and sometimes the eyes. That's what causes an infection. But as I sneeze and as I cough, I will also transmit or transfer some of the droplets and the virus to my hand. I will touch a surface. I will touch something that somebody else might come and touch. And through that, if they touch it and touch their face or their nose or their eyes, they risk exposure.
Yeah. Okay.
So that it could be through surfaces or fomites, sometimes as we call them, and direct droplet transmission, which means if you are very close to somebody with the illness and they cough or they sneeze, then you are at risk.
Chances are you might. And then are there some people who are more than at risk as compared to the others? For instance, people who work in the healthcare, you know,
Yes,
you know, facilities and all those, you know, so can you talk about then this group of people who are more at risk as compared to, you know, the other persons?
Yeah, I would say the risk depends on several things. One is the age. So the older you are, the more likely the virus will overwhelm your system and cause an illness. Because there are people may be exposed but not infected.
Yeah.
They clear the virus before it can establish itself. And that can happen quite often when people are fit and healthy. The other thing is your location. Where are you? So if you're in the heat of things, the hotspots, like now parts of Italy, parts of Korea, yes, you can see the hotspots. So if you're in a hotspot, you are at a greater risk despite your age, or regardless of your age, as compared to somebody else who is outside that hotspot.
The hotspot, yeah.
And that is very important. That's actually the most important risk factor right now. For people with family members or caregivers, for people with occupations that we see healthcare workers, especially at the front line, who are dealing with people who are sick. Also for people who deal with many people in a day, like people in the transport industry, people in the
hotel industry.
Yes, hotel industry. Anywhere you deal with many people, that places you at a risk. So, but this risk should be graduated depending on where you are. Somebody in Nairobi right now is at a much lower risk than somebody in Wuhan or somebody in Italy where the outbreak is raging. So those, I think, are the three things that would determine how big your risk is.
Okay.
Yes.
So then we hear a lot of cases. I mean, the government, Ministry of Health, you're telling people, well, if you experience these symptoms, which we've talked about, you need to self-quarantine. What does that mean? Just that aspect of self-quarantine.
I think that message is not as you put it. I would say that if you think you've been exposed,
you have been exposed, or exposure is the word,
then you can self-quarantine. The moment you develop symptoms, you don't belong to the house. At that point, you belong to the hospital. You belong to the health facility.
Would
because
you rather be in the house a little bit and then monitor? And then, or the
it means you will be exposing other people.
Other people,
so self-quarantine will work best. And quarantine works when you distance from others when you are exposed. So you are at risk of developing the infection because you think you've been exposed or you've actually been exposed. So for these people who have not shown any symptoms yet, but they've been exposed. Say I've traveled to China and I feel like I may be at risk of getting the infection. Yes, because I've been exposed, I can self-quarantine. I can sit in the house, watch TV, read a book, do anything, and make sure whatever utensils I'm using are my own, not anyone else in the house. I avoid interacting with other people. In fact, if you are at that risk, I mean, you've been exposed, you can wear a mask just in case you are emitting any viruses. And monitor your symptoms. So monitor your temperature daily or several times in a day. Monitor if you develop any cough, any fever, feel tired, which of course sometimes could just be because of you are sitting in the house for too long, then you contact the hospital. And the hotlines that the government has given. So this hospital, you're contacting them to warn them in advance so that you don't surprise them and walk into the casualty and you have coronavirus. And maybe you don't, but you could have it. And there are people there who are sick, meaning they are more vulnerable, so you could infect them. And the healthcare workers are not ready for you maybe at that time. they may not take precautions to protect themselves or the others. But if you warn them in advance, then you protect others and help yourself to get assistance quickly.
Okay.
So self-quarantine is for people who've been exposed,
Okay.
but not showing symptoms. The moment you begin to show symptoms, then you get isolated.
Okay.
Isolation is for those who are showing symptoms, meaning they are suspected cases or confirmed cases.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, here's the thing. I mean, even from the reports that we hear is that, fine, let's say there are people who are coming in from other parts of the world.
Yes.
They are tested and released to go.
Yes.
All right. And that is where people have a major problem.
Yes.
Because you test this people. What if this person is asymptomatic? One. Or two, what if this person is not showing symptoms? Then,
Yes.
if you release them, they will show the symptoms later and probably infect so many other people before they get themselves into the hospital.
Those are real concerns. And I think the main problem so far has been the plane that jetted in from China about a week ago. And the first thing is to reassure people that we brought in, say, 250 people max who had been to China, if you include the crew. The people in China who are at biggest risk are in a province that has been quarantined. So these people are not living. They are not the people who came into this plane. The rest of the country that is at risk and has less restrictions is about 1.3 billion people. Out of 1.3 billion people, you have 13,000 who are infected. That's about one person in 100,000.
Okay.
So if you are to pick 250 from this 1.3 billion to bring in, you're bringing in people who may actually not have been at risk. And they are screened at their country of exit because there's a risk. The country doesn't want to spoil its name everywhere.
Yeah,
so they'll
and
screen them
help people.
and they are screened again at entry.
Okay.
And yes, it's possible for somebody to be infected and not show the
Show any
symptoms, or
symptoms,
maybe
yeah.
they took some medicine for lowering the fever and you still miss them. But what we need to do after that is to monitor them. So what they were told to do, I think, is self-quarantine. And what probably I would do if I was monitoring these people is to call them regularly and check if they have developed any symptoms and if they're actually obeying the self-quarantine by social distancing.
Right.
That would be perfect. But the good thing is that if you look at these 239 people versus the 1.3 billion, with only 13,000 infected, the risk of having brought somebody who is sick is actually quite low. If you do a mathematical estimation, I was doing it, you need to bring in 100,000 people, which means out of 250 per day, that's how many days? 40 days or 400 days, maybe. It's a long time.
It's a long time.
Yes, so it's not that risky as we think. Yes, these were not like test tubes of virus
And
walking
if that
in.
is the case, then why can't we have, okay, probably this may not be so much in your domain, but why is it that can't we have the students who are there?
Yes.
They are okay, according to the information that we are getting, is that they do not have the virus. Why then not bring them
These
into the
students are
country?
in Wuhan, which is under lockdown.
Yeah.
So I would think twice before pulling them out.
All right.
If you're pulling them out because you want to protect them, then it's not really the right decision to do. Because they are quarantined, they are not interacting with people. So in fact, when you take them out of their places and you want to bring them over, you're exposing them during the travels. But one of the things I'm really worried about these students is their psychological well-being.
Exactly.
You've been in the same place for about 6 weeks now, maybe it's only heading to 2 months. I don't know, there's a time they were complaining if they're getting enough food. I hope they are. So those are the things I'll be worried about. And they can be supported so that they don't get into psychological distress or nutritional deficiencies, so that they are taken care of. Bringing them here may have its challenges. If we were to bring them safely, we could put things in place, like screen them before, maybe get them a chartered plane. It's a lot of trouble. And I would say...
Isn't it worth it, though?
Yes, I would say that to gauge if it's worth it, we need to be in touch with them. So I'm hoping our embassy in Beijing is talking to them daily to gauge their mental status. Are they coping? If they're really not coping, then we can consider. But if they're coping well and they're well taken care of, there shouldn't be a rush to bring them, because when they're quarantined, then they're safe.
Okay. Yes. All right. So our time is really, really far much spent. We need to go for a break right now. But can you talk about these numbers very briefly, and then I think we can talk about prevention, and in the event that you notice some of the symptoms, what do you do? Now, here are these numbers, really, really scary, and the numbers are really growing by the hour.
Yes.
Not even by the hour, by the minute.
Yes.
They're changing. In the morning, it was around 93, and right now we're at 94, 251.
Yes.
And we do not see so many cases in the continent.
Yes.
Judging from what we're seeing over here, it's mostly Asia, Europe, and of course some parts of North and South America. But in Africa, I mean, we're you know, somewhat
Yeah, spared so far.
clear. Yes.
Yes.
So does it? What does this say? Because there's so many again theories that
Yes.
people have. One, Africans were very immune, as we cannot get these things.
Yes.
And two, and which I'll just take you to it so that we can see. And this is in the number of
Flights. Yeah,
flights.
this is a very good
See?
information. Yes.
You see all of this. Look at the African airspace.
This
It's
this
pretty
actually
much
tells
clear.
tells the story that
Exactly.
we should get into.
Yeah.
And if you look at the previous map, we don't need to go back.
right.
What
Yes.
it tells you is that initially, if you look at this in late January, it would just be around Southeast Asia,
Asia,
and China.
yes. Yeah.
But now, more than 1/3, nearly half actually, of the countries in the world are affected.
Okay.
So it's no longer a Chinese problem.
Yeah.
It is a global issue. That is the first thing when you look at that data.
Okay.
The fact that Africa has been had very few cases is actually shown by this map you're showing now, that there's been very little exposure
Yes.
as compared to the
Not
other
so many
places.
planes coming in and
Yes,
out
and
of
that
the
has been the
continents.
case
Yeah.
in Africa for a long time. It's not just because of this corona. So, and because we've had less exposure, it means we've had less cases.
Okay.
But we've seen over the last 3 days, several countries reporting first case.
Yeah.
So our response to these first few cases needs to be very robust, needs to be very well targeted so that we don't allow it to spread.
Okay.
So there's not evidence right now that Africans are resistant to the virus.
Yeah.
In fact, we have common colds caused by other coronaviruses that have infected us from time immemorial.
Yeah.
And most of us are infected with those already. And we get infected several times in our
Yeah.
lifetime.
All
So
right.
there's no evidence as such. Anybody telling you that is being an optimist and
Yeah.
very speculative.
Yeah.
We don't have any evidence to suggest that we are immune to this
That's
virus.
specific.
In fact,
Okay.
I think it's very unlikely that we are. The most likely reason is because we are not as exposed as many other continents. As you've seen in that map, it's very good data
It is,
that there's
yeah.
very little travel as compared to the rest of the
Compared to
world.
the rest of the world. And
Yes.
it's quite, okay then. That sort of works to our advantage in one way or the other.
Currently, yes.
All right.
But sometimes it may be to your disadvantage. Yeah.
You're right. Okay then. So can we then talk about our climate weather?
Yes.
Slightly.
Yes.
Because the book we're saying, especially in Europe, it's winter now.
Yes.
And we're seeing a lot of cases again around
Yes.
there as
Yes.
compared to Africa. So can we, is it true,
Yes.
is it not?
What we've seen with flu and other viruses that cause common colds is that they multiply and spread very fast during winter because the weather is dry and cold. So a droplet can go very far because it doesn't become heavy and fall down.
Yeah.
So because of this, we can't say because the transmission is similar, we can stretch this a bit and say coronavirus is more likely to spread in the cold season,
As compared
in winter
to-
areas, than in tropical areas.
All right.
And if you look at Africa and South America, we've had fewer cases. It could be also partially because of that our climate is warmer,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean we cannot get cases. We do get cases because parts of our countries are quite cold, quite low in temperature, and we can get sustained transmission throughout the year, even like we see for influenza. It doesn't just occur in places which have
In
winter.
places which
We
have
get
winter,
influenza
yeah.
cases here throughout the year.
All
So
right.
it may be protective in the sense that you may not have one time when there's a very huge spike, but there will be transmission throughout the year in places especially where there's the outbreaks, where there are cases to transmit to other people.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, another question which I received on my social handles is that one, can you get it through parcels? Because there's so many people who ship stuff
Yes.
from China or to other parts of
Yes.
the continent and bring it into the country. So can it
I
be
would-
like
I wouldn't
one
be-
of the ones?
I wouldn't be worried about shipping pass. In fact, right now I'm worried that there will be nothing to be shipped soon because many companies have shut down. But this virus is unlikely to survive a day even. It's most viruses that have a coating like this one, have an envelope like this one, survive for minutes, maybe 30 minutes on a dry surface. So it's unlikely to survive for that long unless it's in a liquid, which is unlikely. So the chance of getting a virus on a parcel infecting somebody is really almost non-existent because the duration it takes to bring this stuff across to our ports is a long time.
Yeah.
And the virus will have long died by then
Okay.
because it has an envelope and viruses that have that coating or that envelope are very fragile.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's talk about our country. Just narrowing down because again, our time is far much spent.
Yes.
Kenya, do you feel we are ready to tackle this?
Yes and no.
Yes
I
and
say
no.
yes
Okay.
because
Yes,
we've taken
that would be-
steps.
Yeah.
to respond or to put measures in place for response. So I would say if we got a few cases, we would be all right. There are people now in certain parts of the country that would have the ability to respond. But if we have an overwhelming number of cases, our system is fragile. We will have too much to cope with. We are unlikely to contain that. So I would say our best hope scenario is that we get a few cases, we manage them, and people relax, the fear goes away. But
people are already scared.
Yes, but
yes.
If we have many cases coming in or a wave of transmissions that overwhelms our systems, our healthcare systems, including supplies, including the hospital facilities that we have, including the number of staff we have, then that is a risk that we run.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Do you feel that the healthcare providers are well trained? I know the MOH talked about an aspect of 1,000 already trained, and the target is around 5,000.
Yes.
Is this enough, really, 5,000?
My approach would be more of facility-based, because these people will go to a facility. They'll go to a health facility. So we should be asking how many of our facilities are ready. Is Kenyatta Hospital ready? I know for sure it is.
It is
Is
ready.
Mbagathi Hospital ready? We are told it's getting ready.
Yeah.
What I'm a bit worried about are our private hospitals. Many of these travelers could go to a private hospital. I do not know, maybe they have been engaged. I do not know how much engagement has been with private hospitals. That is one area that we need to look at. Also, we need to bring more people on the table so that we have different players taking a role in this, because there are people who are running factories, there are people who are running places where there are many people, schools and things like that. They need to be brought onto the table and engaged so that they know how to best control or prevent a spread in their institutions. This is not something the government can do alone. It's not something the Ministry of Health can do alone. But they can initiate and support other people. And I'm sure they're working with international technical organizations like WHO and UN to try and pull this through. So as it is, I think we are now on the right path. We took a while to take off. There's now political will. We've seen it. I'm told today the Minister for Health was meeting with governors. That's a very good step, because
he actually said the Mbagathi facility in Mbagathi should be up and running by tomorrow. Yes,
which is a good thing. Friday or Thursday, I don't know.
They said tomorrow,
which is a good
Thursday,
thing. So we really need the counties, because they are in charge of health, to step up. And as they step up, they'll require support. And even private players, including even non-health sector players, to come in and so that everybody is conscious, has the right information, and puts measures in place to respond appropriately, to avoid wrong decisions that could spur the outbreak.
Yeah, because we've seen a lot of stigma, cases of stigma around. I mean, people either being verbally abused or physically abused, simply because they are nationals of, and especially, from China or the Asian, countries. So a lot of stigma from the same, and this is because of the information that people have as far as coronavirus is concerned. So then, what can we do as a people? One, to prevent either the outbreak or the spread of the virus, and two, pass on the right information, because I think information is very, very key. And if we have the right information, then cases of stigma, outbreak, and all those things will go down.
Yeah. Indeed, it's very difficult, I've noticed, to pass across the right information. It's very actually easy to pass it, but being taken up has been a challenge, because despite how many times we've passed this information, there are people who will still be gullible to misinformation. And so we have to keep doing it at all forums that are possible, and also encourage individuals at individual level to seek the right information. So, and the government has to come out strongly, but also other organizations in this, to share information to their employees, to their students, to their anybody in their circles, so that you have the right information. And we've seen WhatsApp can do wonders in distributing information. We can take that opportunity to distribute the correct information. The stigma is really unfortunate, but it's really a weakness of us as humans, that every time there's a challenge, we are easy to look at scapegoats and really profile. And I will want to remind people that during the Ebola outbreak, we actually saw Africans from East Africa being stigmatized in countries, and yet the Ebola was in West Africa. We know these guys had nothing, no risk at all. It is the same thing with China. Right now, actually, the outbreak in China is going down.
It's on a plateau.
All the cases, it's going down, actually. There are fewer cases now being reported from China than there were before, and that has been declining. in Africa, all the cases, I think there are about 12 or 13, none of them has come from China. They've come from other parts, mainly from Italy and other parts of Europe and some parts of the Middle East. So we are seeing that despite this information, people are still looking at them as if anybody of Chinese extraction, anybody as if they are a walking virus. But this is far from the truth. It shouldn't be the case. In fact, we should appreciate that there are many people of Chinese extraction that are actually not Chinese citizens, that have not been to China in years, and we should bear in mind that the fact that they are here with us is I mean, shows that they've probably not even been where the virus is.
Yes.
Okay. So it's really unfortunate, and I hope that we as Kenyans will not fall for it. And across the world, we need more of solidarity than racial profiling. If we come together, we will be able to get supplies where they are required, healthcare workers where they are required, money where it is needed, rather than trying to lock out. Like right now, if we needed masks and they can only be shipped from China, are we going to say no?
What do we do? Okay, all right. So as we finish, it's like a yes or no type of question. Do we have a cure yet? I think that's the important thing that people want to know.
No, we don't.
We don't.
There have been some tested drugs that are promising, but so far we've not proven that this is a cure. But the good thing is that when you go to hospital, you get support. Like if you are in pain, if you are coughing too much, if you're having problems breathing, you get support that could actually save your life. So it's not necessarily that you need a cure to be treated. You can be treated with other supportive means of healing.
And plus, there's a way the body sort of like fights the virus. So again, there's a way.
Yes,
all right. So we have to end the discussion here. I think this is something that we can discuss over and over and over and over again. So please come by again.
Sure, if you invite me.
So that we can have this discussion so that, again, we pass the correct information as far as coronavirus is concerned. So Moses Masika, virologist, you were in. Thank you so much for coming by
Thank you for the effort.
Really, really appreciate your time.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right, so let's take a very short break. But when we come back, we still have other stories, including business and sports news you do not want to miss. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, the Independent Policing Oversight Authority now says cases of rogue police officers going scot-free will not end if the current structure of the criminal justice system remains in place. The police watchdog body says most often than not, they are forced to play catch-up on the same institution they ought to oversee.
Cases of law enforcers turning to become the law unto themselves have become rampant in the country, with human rights bodies recording an upsurge in cases of extrajudicial killings and enforced disappearances over the last 1 year.
Is IPOA aware that Kenyans are paying for bullets, for guns discharged by police officers?
So clearly there is a gap there, and we must figure out how to make sure that it doesn't remain that way.
Now this, according to IPOA, will remain the case if the criminal justice chain remains entangled as it is.
Then you have instances of duplicity of investigations. The authority was constituted to provide oversight over the work of the police. On the other hand, we have DCI, who have a wide mandate to carry out investigations wrong. Because we strongly feel, just like any other independent observer, you cannot effectively investigate yourself.
According to IPOA Chair Ann Makori, their mandate is overshadowed by, among others, the DCI, whom they ought to oversight. The authority, whose core mandate is to nab trigger-happy cops and ensure justice for their victims, now say they need more teeth to bite.
It would be good for IPOA to be considered, the IPOA officers to be given prosecutorial powers, so that we take off the far part of the load from ODPP.
The body at pains to explain how to boost their vibrancy in their mandate, even as the human rights bodies maintain the body is not up to par.
You're investigating the police. And when you investigate the police, you send the bullets or the gun to them to give you a ballistics report that you will use to prosecute them. Am I the only one who doesn't think that doesn't make sense, logically or common sense?
IPOA told the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee of the Senate that they have documented 210 cases of extrajudicial killings in the last 15 months.
On the police officers, I would like to say We have a file on one of them. Yes. I think that's work in progress.
Chairperson Anne Makori says the cases involve people dying in police custody, executions in broad daylight, and forced disappearances.
It's like having a list of people who should be killed in a police station. I'm really hoping you are stretching this a bit. Like, I'm hopeful. I believe you, but I'm hoping you're stretching it because it sounds like it's out of a movie. So
There is, and I don't know whether Chair Ipo, you've watched the movie Nairobi Half-Life. It's not even Half-Life. It's a Nairobi No Life.
Of the cases documented, IPOA says it has completed investigations into 110 cases. Of these, 75 are currently before the courts, 34 are pending at the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, and 20 files are yet to be submitted to the ODPP.
And elsewhere, Third Way Alliance Party leader Ekuru Aukot on Wednesday suffered a political setback after High Court quashed his petition to have Building Bridges initiative, that is the BBI task force, disbanded. Aukot had challenged the constitutionality of BBI, saying its formation did not follow due legal process. Our reporter Jeff Kaimba with more details.
Responsible to evidently new pillars.
In the ruling delivered by Justice John Mativo, the BBI team formed by President Uhuru Kenyatta and the ODM leader Raila Odinga is legally constituted.
I shall not get into the issue as to whether the participation was adequate or not. The obvious issue that should arise in this petition is therefore whether the directive violates any of the fundamental rights and freedoms as alleged. I now try to examine that issue. End of quote. That any time the president performs his function under the said articles, he is required to subject his decision to public participation. Such interpretation would be first, it has not been established that the function in question is outside the constitutional mandate of the president. Second, there is no material before me to suggest there has been misuse of public funds. The third issue and the last issue, whether the task force usurped the functions of other constitutional commissions.
Third Way Alliance Party leader Ekuru Aukot had challenged the formation of BBI, wanting the court to declare it unconstitutional and its report nullified. He argues the formation of the BBI team has amounted to misuse of the public resources. However, Justice John Mativo ruled that President Uhuru Kenyatta cannot be said to have acted ultra-vires the Constitution.
The task force is also mandated to outline the policy and administrative reform proposals and implementation modalities for each identified challenge area and conduct consultation with citizens, the faith-based sector, cultural leaders, the private sector, and experts at both county and national levels. Relevant to the issue under consideration is the fact that national unity is one of the core values in Article 10. And the conclusions arrived at, I find and hold that this petition fails in its entirety. Accordingly, I hereby dismiss the petitioner's petition dated 13 December 2018 with no orders as to costs.
Ekuru Aukot's Punguza Mizigo bill flopped in the county assemblies, as however said that he will appeal the court's decision.
Sounds a good judgment. We'll look at it keenly, we'll study it keenly, where we feel the legal issues have not been, just been surpassed because of the excuse of our political doctrine. I think we might still want to seek a determination on those legal issues.
Prudence. But a cursory look at this shows that most of the issues that we raised have not been determined. And when we come to court, we expect the court to determine the issues that have been raised. So that's why
BBI task force was formed following President Kenyatta's March 9, 2018 handshake with Raila Odinga to operationalize their reconciliation across the country. The task force is co-chaired by Senators Yusuf Haji and Amos Wak of Busia. A reporter for Ebru TV, I'm Jeff Kaimba.
And away from that, Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture and Livestock, Peter Munya, has called on commercial banks to come up with loan terms that are accessible to Kenyans, especially small-scale traders. According to Munya, high interest rates, collateral requirements, and complex application procedures deter small businesses in Kenya from accessing credit. Our reporter Amelia Kisienya tells us more.
33% of Kenyans avoid taking loans from commercial banks despite being in need of credit, a majority being the small-scale traders. Speaking during the annual delegates meeting of the Kenya Police Circle, as the chief guest was the CS for Agriculture and Livestock, Peter Munya, who called upon commercial banks to reconsider their loan terms and ensure they are tailored to the client's accessibility. According to Munya, most small traders shy away due to the tough conditions set by the respective commercial banks. He lauded SACCOs in Kenya and noting that a majority of Kenyans preferred SACCOs for their low interest rates.
SACCOs exist to serve the interests of the members. That's the primary role. Primary role is to make sure that members access financial services, access them in affordable terms.
The national government has also further come up with a policy that is set to protect mushrooming SACCOs in the country.
But we have also tightened regulation through the Commission of Cooperatives for that lower echelon of SACCOs to deal with issues of malpractice, misappropriation of members' savings within SACCOs, and a recent emergence of pyramid-like SACCOs that are created for purposes of mobilizing money from members, taking it away and then, of course, disappearing. So SACCO now will have that ability to oversee the bigger SACCO membership, make sure that they are properly run.
The Kenya Police Circle was today electing a new set of board of directors as well as presenting their fiscal budget of 8 trillion for the year 2020-2021. The circle was held for championing efforts in the education sector following a proposed budget of 25 million Kenya shillings that will see into the construction of Utumishi Girls High School set to benefit children of police officers. Mile Kisenya for Ebru TV.
All right, thank you, Milia. Now, investigations into the late Sergeant Kipyegon Kene's death have revealed that the once head of security at the Deputy President William Ruto's office was murdered. Detectives say that Kene was drugged before he was shot through his chin, with a bullet exiting through his head, killing him instantly.
It is a murder that may remain to be one of the biggest mysteries, even with the new investigation findings, which reveal that Sergeant Kipyegon was murdered, contrary to initial reports that he may have committed suicide. The investigating officers remain puzzled from the missing data from the sergeant's phone, which was wiped clean days before his body was discovered at his house in Imara Daima, leaving little to rely on to trace the people he last spoke to before he was murdered. Further, the detectives remain confused at the motive of the existence of the suicide note collected from his house, with evidence showing it did not bear the handwriting of the officer. One of the officers informed with the investigations said that the crime scene had been tampered with and had been made to look like suicide. The officer whose gun was found lying close to his body was on duty on the day the former Cabinet Secretary for Sports, Rashid Echesa, visited Deputy President William Ruto's office before it emerged that he was involved in a 39 billion shillings military equipment scandal. Kene's body will be buried at his Chamasis village home this Saturday. The circumstances of his death have delayed his burial arrangements since an officer who commits suicide is not given a 21-gun salute.
And to some rather shocking news now, and 1 in every 5 teenage girls between 15 and 19 years either had a live birth or are pregnant with their first child. According to a report by the National Council for Population and Development, teenage pregnancy and motherhood stands at 18%. This data was released during a campaign to curb teenage pregnancies in the country. Kind of Stefano with that story.
The campaign termed Let's Act has been launched. Will bring all stakeholders together to fight the vice that is widespread in some regions in Kenya.
We have talked and talked and talked a lot about the girl child and early and teenage pregnancies. And it is high time today we are saying let's act. So let's act. What are some of the key action points that I would like to be taken apart from what is already done.
Kilifi County is one of the counties most affected by the vice, but there are school heads who are in the front line to ensure this comes to an end.
Nasugumsia watoto katika mashule, nikianzia na shuleni kwangu. So katika shule, katika mikutano yote, nasugumsia juu ya watoto wasipate mimba za mapema. Naongea na wasasi kwa kirefu sana katika mikutano, na waita kwa mikutano, na najaribu kuwaelezea mbinu ambazo wanaweza kutumia kusaidia wasichana wetu manyumbani ili wasipate mimba za mapema.
The campaign will be spread to the grassroots as a way of ensuring that even the people with little access to information will be reached and be informed.
Is now to come out of these conference halls and go to the ground. I come from Migori County, which is rating very highly among those counties with the highest levels of teenage pregnancies in Kenya.
Paris Karuga is the only school head whose school has never reported cases of teen pregnancy in Kilifi County, and she shares some insights.
Kuhamasisha watoto juu ya kujiangalia wenyewe na kujikubali katika zile hali zao na kuangaliana wenyewe kwa wenyewe, kusaidiana. Tunajaribu sana tena kuelezea watoto wetu wasiweze kupewa pesa ama zawadi zozote na watu ambao wasio wafahamu.
It's a vice that calls for a serious discussion among communities in Kenya as a way of ensuring that cultural practices that have these occurrences are done away with.
And these pregnancies, they are not just pregnancies. Some of them are also accompanied with HIV, AIDS, and other infectious diseases. Kwa hivyo, ninasisitisha, tafadhalini wa Kenya wote tuungane mkono, tukalinde watoto wetu.
Reporting for Ebru TV, I'm Kaindo Stefano.
Well, let's get down to business now. And the Ministry of Innovation, Communication and Technology Cabinet Secretary Joe Musheru has today assured stakeholders that the government will support domestication of the International Spectrum Treaty adopted by the World Radio Communication Conference 2019. Take a look.
Musheru said that the Spectrum Treaty has the ability to unlock the potential for game-changing 5G, the fifth-generation cellular network technology around the world, and as such must be used efficiently and equitable to consumers to give them equal opportunities. The CS stated that Kenya will be fully compliant with the treaty that will set a framework of the fifth-generation mobile technologies as well as spectrum resource mobilization that will help in achievement of SDGs. Musheru also said that the international coordination supported by International Telecommunication Union at WRCs is essential to achieving widespread spectrum harmonization for mobile services.
The outcome of the WRC 19, therefore, provides Kenya with additional spectrum allocation that can be utilized in various services to develop solutions to some of the challenges we currently face, and equally enable us to provide better, improved services to Kenyans in areas such as universal access to ICT, food security, education, public security, and climate change, amongst others.
Speaking today in Nairobi during the sensitization workshop on decisions of WRC 19, the CS observed that Kenya played an important role in forming the strategy of the WRC 19 conference and shaping the African agenda. He also added that they were working with the judiciary to begin transcribing court sessions as a means to better service delivery. The mobile industry goal going to WRC 19 was to identify enough 5G spectrum to deliver long-lasting socio-economic benefits.
The Ministry of ICT, Innovation and Youth Affairs is very pleased with the leading role the Kenyan delegation played individually and together in coordinating all the African countries to ensure that the results of this conference were beneficial to the continent of Africa. This demonstrates that Kenya is highly regarded in the area of spectrum management, not only in the region, but globally as well. We finally are working very closely with the judiciary, and we are going into a pilot mode where we are now beginning to transcribe the proceedings in court.
With technology moving quicker than ever before, it's important that Kenya and the African continent aren't left behind.
And elsewhere, the Digital Lenders Association of Kenya has announced the first ever Money March, a month-long event dedicated to bringing providers and consumers together in a conversation around financial health and wellness.
The discussions around mobile lending apps and their overall benefit to the Kenya economy has been a subject of intense debate, with some arguing about the benefits while others claim that the lenders are out to exploit users.
Someone somewhere set up a company and then they give you a loan and then they list you in CRB. They ask us to fix those things. And they ask us also to ensure we cure these companies that show up from nowhere and then they give out money.
The app-based lenders have been around for more than half a decade, and while they've made millions of Kenyans get access to credit, they have also been accused of harassment of users in case of default.
I'm amending the Central Bank Act to enable anybody in Tala, anybody in Mshwari to be regulated, to tell us what is the interest rate, to tell us where their offices, to tell us what are they doing, and then shaming and naming of individuals, and then protection of the data of those people who are applying these loans, because we want to have a safe environment for our young people.
And the banking sector regulator, the Central Bank of Kenya, admits that its regulatory framework is limited to traditional financial institutions such as banks, and as such does not have mechanism to regulate the lenders. Digital lenders have, however, seen themselves differently, arguing that they've provided Kenyans with more choices than ever before, although they face more risks when it comes to managing their financial lives. According to DLAC chairman Robert Masinde, the lenders have initiated conversation dubbed Money March to bring providers and customers together to discuss how best they can leverage digital credit and other services to help customers and entrepreneurs grow and work towards their goals. Ivan Boa, DLAC board member and Tala Kenya general manager, while launching the initiative, expressed enthusiasm for the initiative, saying that they will support customers as they grow and work towards their goals. He said that providing customers with the financial education they need to make smart decisions is one of the many ways that they can deliver on that promise. Busana Naman for Ebru TV.
All right, and we cannot end the bulletin without some sporting action, which is coming up right after this. Let's play, and we begin on a rather sad note, and Kenya Simbas and KCB Rugby Club fullback Tony Onyango has passed on. The 28-year-old Onyango collapsed and died on Tuesday night at his house in Ngong. Onyango had trained with his club Monday evening in Ruaraka. KCB rugby team manager Philip Wamae confirmed the passing on of the player. Onyango, a Maseno School alumnus, has played for Kenya across all representative levels, starting with under-19 in 2010 to his test debut for Kenya Simbas in 2012 when he was brought on board by Michael Tank Otieno to his first test match against Namibia on June 28th. May his soul rest in eternal peace. Now, Harambee Stars captain Victor Wanyama has left Tottenham Hotspur to join Major League Soccer side Montreal Impact in a 3.5-year deal. Montreal, under the tutelage of Arsenal legend Thierry Henry, is currently third in the MLS league standing. The midfielder has failed to nail a starting berth at Tottenham following the exit of Mauricio Pochettino, who coached the English Premier League side before current coach Jose Mourinho. Now, Wanyama could make his debut for Montreal against FC Dallas this Saturday.
I think, MLS is a very good league. It's been growing, and of course, I've seen great players, going to MLS, and I've always had that interest one day to come and play here. So now I had the opportunity to come, and I'm happy to come and be part of it as well. Montreal is a good team. It's a team with also ambitions from the manager and also the players, some of the players that I know, and you can tell, you know, the project is going to be big, and the development is going to be also huge. So it was easy to decide to come here. So I chose here for those reasons, because they have good ambitions.
And this year's Beyond Zero Marathon will feature visually impaired and Paralympics wheelchair competitors in the race that has attracted over 20,000 participants ahead of the event to run on Sunday in Nairobi. The half marathon this year will have a prize kitty of 2.8 million shillings, with the winners of the 21 kilometers bagging 250,000 shillings each, while the winners of the 10-kilometer category will go home with 100,000 Kenyan shillings each.
Athletics Kenya boss General Jackson Tuwei, event organizer IMG Kenya CEO Peter Gasheru, and Police Commissioner Joshua Omutata today unveiled an elaborate plan for the event. The elite start has also been incorporated in accordance with the international standards for 21 kilometers and 10 kilometers road races. The Paralympic race will be flagged off at 6:30 a.m., followed by 21-kilometer half marathon at 7 a.m. The 10-kilometer road race and corporate run will be flagged off at 8:30 a.m., followed by 3-kilometer, the family fun race.
This will be followed by the 5 kilometers family fun race, and our new addition to the categories, the 2 kilometers pregnant walk for expectant mothers.
All the races will be flagged outside Nyayo Stadium on Uhuru Highway. Thereafter, the participants will head towards CBD on Uhuru Highway, all the way up to Museum Overpass, before making their way back to Nyayo Stadium through Kenyatta Avenue.
That the road, which has already been said, is properly going to be secured, safe to the participants. We would therefore say that all other vehicles that had intended to use the road, we advised them to divert their route.
AKA President Jack Tuwei confirmed that with the finalized route and other plans in place, they were ready to host the half marathon as scheduled.
We have encouraged most of the athletes to come and take part, because, as you are all aware, this is a very, very important event, not only for the athletes, but even for all those who have been supported in the past, and you all know and understand the kind of support that this event has given to the citizens of this country.
Other categories are wheelchair half marathon and 21-kilometer tri-cycle half marathon, all amateur categories. For the elite categories, winners will be taking home 250,000 shillings for half marathon and 100,000 shillings for 10-kilometer race.
The Paralympics wheelchair, men and women, will have 100,000 each. For the visually impaired, categories T1, T11, T12, and T13 will have 50,000 each.
Davis Mberia, Ebru Sports.
All right, and on that note, we conclude the Ebru TV Primetime News on this 4th day of March 2020. Thank you so much for staying with us. I believe that you've learned a lot today as far as the coronavirus is concerned. But remember, you need to keep yourself and the ones around you safe from contracting the coronavirus. We have to end it here. My name is Winnie Lubembe on behalf of an amazing, amazing team who you never get to see. And that is from our reporters to our technical team, our director, Alice, and her team. We want to wish you a lovely night. Not forgetting our sign language interpreter tonight has been Joyce Werimu, together with our cameraman, who will kill me if I do not say thank you to them. So stay safe. Good night. Up next is the weather forecast, and later on, we'll have excellent programming coming right after this.